Testing 1 2 3.
وإذ قلنا
Testing 1 2 3.
وإذ قلنا
Cool. I'm ready to go. You're ready to go. We're ready to go. Let's go. 3 2 1. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to another episode of Quran in English. My name is Ahmad, and I'm happy to take you through two sections of the. Yeah, I was gonna build this up with excitement, but we're gonna talk about it at the beginning anyway. Before I talk about what I'm gonna cover in the Quran, which is Surah Al-Kahf, chapter 18, the chapter of the cave, I'd like to explain that I am approaching the Quran to see what I can learn and understand. I'm not approaching it from the perspective of hadith at this point in time, which I know a lot of people disagree with, but it is not the purpose of this channel. The purpose of this channel is education, to start with what does the Quran say and then branch out from there. It is important because the Quran is preserved by God, and therefore the most critical for me to review and understand and learn. It is also worth noting that I would like to research into Christianity and Judaism as well, into the Torah, the Psalms, and the Injil, which loosely translates to the Gospels, but we'll get there when we get there. And I must always explain that I'm not a Quranic scholar nor an Arabic linguist. I have not studied the Quran, and this is my first read through of the Quran for a lot of the Quran, but not this chapter. And I have not studied the Arabic language beyond school. I'm merely sharing my education journey with you in the hopes that you might learn something, but also if you have a different perspective, feel free to let me know, and I might learn something too. Now for today, I've already kind of spoiled it, but I'm still gonna try and do the theatrics around it. I was gonna do one section as I always do in the Quran. I always take the sections based off of the little stars, these little flowers. I don't know what they are, stars, flowers, in each verse, and that's one episode's content. But this episode, this clip on YouTube, this today's session, will cover two, and primarily because halfway through it stops in the middle of a very interesting story, and I don't want to lose thought. I wanted to kind of gain momentum, and then I saw what it continues to talk about. So there is a lot packed into these two sections, and I'm very excited to share them because there's a lot of ideas, there's a lot of concepts, there's some very interesting things. But first we start with a little bit more morality, more heaven and hell, and then we get into story time. And story time is very exciting. Like, the Quran is all beautiful, and it's hard to appreciate all of the Quran's beauty at all times, because also the Quran speaks to you at different moments in time of your life, and you gain different lessons. So it's not always easy to appreciate the beauty of the Quran. But for these specific verses, at least for me, a person who loves the narrative, a person who loves a story, something that you can follow, this happened, that person said this, then it becomes easy to follow, and it becomes very exciting. And I am very excited for today's episode. All right, I've built it up for you enough. Let's get into it. Before we begin, we must always say A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, and off we go.
ما أشهدتهم خلق السماوات والأرض ولا خلق أنفسهم وما كنت متخذ المضلين عضدا.
In order to explain this, we kind of have to say where we picked off from the previous episode. And the previous episode we talked about the previous verse, which was that we said to the angels, bow down to Adam, and they bowed down except for Iblis. He was made from jinn. Was Iblis an angel? ? See the previous episode for the full discussion. But the point is, he's talking about the creation of Adam, and that the angels were there, and that Iblis was there, and Iblis was also made of jinn, for sure. He was made of fire because he was jinn. And here we're talking about the creation story. And then, and he's saying that anybody that takes the devil or his offspring as protectors from without me, they've taken an enemy, and what a terrible swap it is to take the enemy over your ally. So this verse starts by saying, I did not make them witness the creation of the heavens or the earth, nor the creation of themselves. And I did not take the misleaders as helpers. So we see here God making kind of a distinction, and He is talking specifically about the misleaders, about the devils, about them not being there. But I feel like this also includes the angels in a concept. I did not make them witness the creation of the heavens and the earth, nor the creation of themselves. I feel like it's talking about all of the creatures that God has created. That God created the universe first and then created the creatures. And then it continues to say, and I did not take any of the misguided ones as helpers, that they don't know anything about anything. Yeah.
ويوم يقول نادوا شركائي الذين زعمتم فدعوهم فلم يستجيبوا لهم وجعلنا بينهم موبقا.
I muted my mic so that you guys don't hear the sound of me blowing the trumpet that is my nose. Did I run out of tissues? I did. Anyway. And on the day that He will say, call upon my partners, the ones that God is saying. Call upon those who you said, shared in creation, shared in the effect on the world, shared in... which actually, here's a good point. Like the reason also, in the previous episode, we kind of talked about arrogance being putting yourself at God's level, how to speak. That compares to praying to something other than God. And if anything, it's more prevalent in our modern day society for someone to say, I'm so great, rather than to say Lucifer or Hecate is great. Of course, there are people that still worship them. But here it's specifically talking about those that you're worshiping outside of yourself, but you're saying, and it's talking about the devils and those that cause misguidance. And God is saying, call my partners, the ones that you said that they were my partners, the ones that you claimed, yeah? So call them, but they will not respond. They will not respond to them. The partners that you're saying that you're calling, they're not going to talk to you on Judgment Day and the days. They're not going to be there, not going to say nothing. And we made between them a barrier. Now this is a very interesting little start to the point, and I'm very happy that we're doing the two sections in one go, because the barrier is a key theme for this specific episode, this double section episode that we're going to be talking about. Here it says, and we will make them share all the same doom, which, true, but that's not what this verse is saying. It says, and we made between them a barrier. It's very clear. It's talking about, it's not saying that they don't exist. It's saying that there will be a block, something that shields you from those things that you wish to worship, and yada, yada, yada. Which means that all those people that are praying to those entities can have interactions with those entities, can have, a connection to them, but on the day of judgment, they will not have that connection no more. Those people will leave them. And if you're ever watching a movie and you don't know who the bad guy is, and everyone's like, who's the bad guy, who's the bad guy, who's the bad guy? And then finally the bad guy kind of removes the mask and goes like, ha, 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 it was me, I betrayed you all along. And then you just feel this sense of, but I trusted you. So, it's very interesting. I am the bad guy. You are not the bad guy, Mohab, and welcome to the channel. Nice to have you here. Nice to see you. How's it going? Today we have some very interesting stories, so you might want to hang out, because we have Al-Khidr and Dhul Qurnayn, two very interesting stories. But first, we got to get through a few lessons in the Quran.
ورأى المجرمون النار فظنوا أنهم مواقعوها ولم يجدوا عنها مصرفا.
This reminds me of a guy that said he loves disaster movies. I'm like, why do you love watching disasters come to life? And I don't know, that's the first thing that came to mind. And it says, and the criminals will see a fire. So here they're saying they will be certain, but they thought that they are going to fall in it, and they did not find from it any way of escape. And this is why the first thing that I thought of is like the disaster movie. You see the earthquake, you see the something, you see the whatever, and you can't escape it. It's kind of like very it's imminent. It's coming. I don't know why that guy likes disaster movies. I could talk about a dream with me falling from a plane from the sky, but I think I'll save that for another episode. Anyway.
ولقد صرفنا في هذا القرآن للناس من كل مثل وكان الإنسان أكثر شيء جدلا.
Look, Muhammad talks about you and I. It also talks about everyone. Let's talk about what it says first, and then we'll kind of describe it. And certainly we have explained in this Quran for mankind of every example. We've given every type of example in the Quran, which I feel like is a figure of speech, because obviously there are more examples to be made and more examples to be had. But I think it's just saying that we made many examples, but the actual word just saying is every example. But man was in most things quarrelsome, argumentative. And that's why I love that you shut up, Mahab. The first time that I thought of this quarrelsome, argumentative is I always thought it was describing me. Because even between believers, we're arguing. Even between believers, is Iblis an angel? No, he was jinn. Okay, yeah, we know he was jinn, but was he always an angel? Like, there's always jidal. But I feel like that's a bit more of the kosher side, the halal side of jidal, because we're trying to figure out what the answer is. But a lot of people kind of, see a lot of the examples and they kind of turn away and they say that it's terrible. Yeah, I love these verses, but I'm really I can't wait to get into the story. Impatience, Ahmed. Patience, and see what we're reading first.
وما منع الناس أن يؤمنوا إذ جاءهم الهدى ويستغفروا ربهم إلا أن تأتيهم سنة الأولين أو يأتيهم العذاب قبلا.
And what has prevented men from believing when it comes to them? The guidance and asking for forgiveness from their Lord. The only thing that would get them to do that is that it comes to them the way of the former people, aka those that were given a messenger and told doom is coming, and then doom came. So essentially saying when doom comes, or when it comes to them, the punishment the torment comes before them, which means this is judgment day or heaven hell. So the only time that the disbelievers, the only time that people will believe, some people will believe, not all people, is that when they see the specific divine punishment or judgment day.
وما نرسل المرسلين إلا مبشرين ومنذرين ويجادل الذين كفروا بالباطل ليدحضوا به الحق واتخذوا آياتي وما أنذروا هزوا.
And we did not send the messengers except as bearers of glad tidings, good things will happen to those good people, and as warners. And dispute argue those that disbelieved in falsehood to refute with it the truth. The disbelievers argue in falsehood, hoping to discredit the truth. And they take my verses and what they are warned with in ridicule, in mockery. Oh, you're going to be raised up after we died and bones and dust. Oh, you think you're going to get punished? Oh, you're kind of crazy. Anyway, you get the point.
ومن أظلم ممن ذكر بآيات ربه فأعرض عنها ونسي ما قدمت يداه إنا جعلنا على قلوبهم أكنة أن يفقهوه وفي آذانهم وقرا وإن تدعهم إلى الهدى فلن يهتدوا إذا أبدا.
I have heard some close friends of mine say that we will never believe, and this verse talks about those people, I guess. It's some pretty harsh words. But let's see. And who is more wrong than he who is reminded by the verses of his Lord? And again, it's dhukir, which is very important. A reminder of his verses of his Lord. But he turns away, and he forgot what his hands have sent forth, what his hands have done. Indeed, we have made over their hearts coverings, so that they don't understand it, and we made in their ears a deafness. And again, we've talked about, the three senses that the Quran talks about are sight, hearing, and hearts. Obviously, it's not talking about touch, taste, smell, because you don't get new information from those, but from sight you get new information, from hearing you get new information, and from your heart you get new information. And it starts by saying their hearts are covered and their ears are full of the word that I was wax. I thought this meant wax, but they're saying it's deafness, and let's take the translation over my understanding of the Arabic language. But essentially their hearts are covered and their ears are filled with wax. And if you call them to guidance, they will never be guided then ever. And I'd like to make a small distinction here. You and I don't know who is the believer that needs to go through something before they can hear and believe, and who is the believer that is forever sealed off. We can't know. I can't ever tell somebody that you are going to disbelieve forever, because I don't know. And that was exactly what the previous verse from the previous section was saying. And we can't tell, we also don't know if a believer is going to enter the reverse. Maybe a believer at some point is doing their best to or someone who claims to believe, and then later on down the line they're like misguided and walk away and blinded and confused. So we don't have this information, but God is saying specific disbelievers will never ever believe.
وربك الغفور ذو الرحمة لو يؤاخذهم بما كسبوا لعجل لهم العذاب بل لهم موعد لن يجدوا من دونه موئلا.
Here's a interesting phrase, but your Lord, but your God is the most forgiving of that of mercy. And he said, if he were to seize them for what they have earned, he surely would have hastened for them the punishment. And what's the concept is, if you say some people are disbelievers now, and God's just supposed to seize all the disbelievers and done, that's not merciful. And that's why it starts out with saying God is oft forgiving and full of mercy, because he talks about he doesn't seize you when you immediately disbelieve. And it ends with saying, nay, they have for them an appointment, and they will never find from other than that an escape. And there's a lot being said in this one verse. I think it's interesting how he starts saying, he's merciful, but if he wanted to seize them, he could have, but he'll do it when the time is right. And the lesson in it is exactly what I was saying in the previous verse, is that time doesn't end now. Whether you're a believer or not is not decided by the now. Whether you're a believer or not is decided by the end of your life, right? And God knows more than we do. And some people will absolutely, die disbelievers and die staunch disbelievers. And yeah, they will be seized when they're supposed to be seized. But some people are not. Some people need guidance. Some people have their own journeys. Some people have figured it out. And it's a mercy from God that he doesn't seize everybody when they disbelieve. That's kind of the idea of it.
وتلك القرى أهلكناهم لما ظلموا وجعلنا لمهلكهم موعدا.
Okay, the last verse before we get into story time. And these towns, these villages, we've destroyed them for what they did wrong, and we made for their destruction an appointed time. So while it is saying that God's merciful and kind of delaying it for a specific point in time, God's also saying at a specific point in time, things will get destroyed. The appointed time will come. Let's just see about that. Okay. That's all the nice little lessons. It's interesting. It's good for repetition. It's good to focus. But now, it's story time. And now we get into the narrative, and we bring back a character that we've seen many times in the Quran, Moses, Sayyidina Musa, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. All right.
وإذ قال موسى لفتاه لا أبرح حتى أبلغ مجمع البحرين أو أمضي حقبا.
Okay, so we have two people in this narrative. And when Moses said to his boy, and here we understand it as his boy, as his servant, as his person that's with, I will not cease until I reach the junction of the two seas. Shout out to Bahrain, because I grew up in Bahrain. I don't think the two seas is talking about Al-Bahrain specifically, because Bahrain is not in two seas. I don't know why Al-Bahrain is called two seas. Maybe it is in two seas. I don't know. Either way, Moses is saying, I'm not going to stop until I reach the two seas, or I continue walking for, it's an exaggerated amount of time. Like, I'm going to find the two seas, or I'm going to keep walking. That's kind of what he's saying. What is the footnote? It is reported that an authentic narration collected by Bukhari that a man approached Moses after he gave him a talk and asked, what is the most important, knowledgeable person on earth? Moses responded, that would be me. So Allah revealed to Moses that he should not have said this. I'm not going to get into this too much, but there is a point about arrogance and being the most wise and being the most kind. We're not going to entertain the hadith because, again, I don't know, and we don't know how accurate the hadith is about the time of Moses, because let's just not get complicated. Let's focus on what the Quran is saying. Quran is saying Moses said to his boy, I'm going to keep traveling to the two seas, or I'm going to keep walking for a long time.
فلما بلغا مجمع بينهما نسيا حوتهما فاتخذ سبيله في البحر سربا.
So when they reached the junction of the two seas between them, it says they forgot their fish. But again, he has a boy that's a helper, right? And it took its way in the sea, slipping away. So when they finally reached the point where the seas met, they forgot the fish. It says salted fish, which doesn't make any sense, because if the fish was salted, then it can't swim and it can't slip away. So remove the word saltless, remove the word wondrously. They forgot the fish and it made its way into the sea, slipping away.
فلما جاوزا قال لفتاه آتنا غداءنا لقد لقينا من سفرنا هذا نصبا. Okay, so then they passed by that point. They kept moving forward, and Moses said to the boy, "Bring us our lunch, our morning meal." Why is غداءنا? And I saw that earlier in the previous verse. Why غدا seems to be morning? Whereas غدا, anyway, I'm not going to answer that. غدا is usually the word for lunch in Arabic, and futur is usually the word for breakfast. I have question marks. But either way, it's saying, bring us our meal. Certainly we have suffered from our journey, and this is fatigue. We're tired. We're hungry. Where's the fish? قال أرأيت إذ أوينا إلى الصخرة فإني نسيت الحوت وما أنسانيه إلا الشيطان أن أذكره واتخذ سبيله في البحر عجبا. So the boy said, did you see that when we retired on the rock, so back at the junction of the two seas,
then indeed I forgot the fish, and the fish, the word for fish, al-hut, is the whale, which is very interesting. But it's the fish. I forgot the fish, and nothing made me forget it except the devil that and أذكره. None made me forget to mention this except Satan. Yeah. So either way, he forgot, and he's blaming the devil. He's like, I messed up. I'm sorry. The devil made me forget it. And sometimes as a human living in the world today, when your friend forgets something, like if you imagine if you've been hiking for an hour and then your friend, not even your friend, your servant, your boy, the person who's supposed to take care of yourself, forgot the thing that he was supposed to take care of. Ooh, you can feel a lot of emotions coming up. But he says that the devil made me do it. Like, ooh, take some responsibility is what we would think in modern day today. And anyway, he says, and it took its way in the sea amazingly. And now here we see the word amazingly and miraculously. This is why they added the word salted fish, because they're like, how is it amazing that salted fish can come back to life? And let's not complicate life. The boy said, remember when we sat on the rock? I forgot the fish. The fish must have made its way into the sea.
قال ذلك ما كنا نبغي فارتدا على آثارهما قصصا.
And we've seen examples of Moses in the past, in other verses of the Quran, being angry at the people of Israel for worshipping the calf. The children of Israel, let's be specific, for worshiping the calf after he gave them guidance, after he saved them from the pharaohs, and then he came back there worshiping the calf. He's like, what the hell, you guys? But here, we don't see anger. What we see Moses say is, he said, that is what we were seeking. So they returned upon their footprints retracing. So instead of being angry at the boy, instead of saying negative things or foolish things, he said, actually, that's what we're looking for. That's the moment. And he was guided enough at this point to recognize that this misfortune that was happening was actually good. And he's like, okay, he took it as a sign. We have to go back to that specific point in time, which again shows a lot of the wisdom and the guidance of Moses. And it's very important for the next couple of verses.
فوجدا عبدا من عبادنا آتيناه رحمة من عندنا وعلمناه من لدنا علما.
And this is where the little footnote that I started reading that I didn't really want to get into, I'll explain a little bit about it. But anyway, they say when they went back to that point, they found a servant or slave of our servants or slaves. They found a man, and the Quran says, whom we had given our mercy. And again, it always ties to God being merciful and God giving his mercy to people, and sometimes his mercy from us, and we taught him from us knowledge. So this righteous man had mercy, and this righteous man had knowledge. And it's interesting that he uses the word knowledge. I used to always think of him as the wise man, but he's a knowledgeable man, and he was given knowledge by God. And the reason why I mentioned the footnote from previously is because the story here is that the story that they were claiming from the hadith is that Moses was saying, I'm so strong, but then God told him, I'm going to send you somebody that's stronger and guide you. We don't know any of this, but we do know that in the next verse, Moses explains to this man that I want to be guided by you. So let's see what he says.
قال له موسى هل أتبعك على أن تعلمني مما علمت رشدا.
So all we know is Moses comes to him, Moses said to him, may I follow you so that you can teach me what you have been taught from guidance. So Moses clearly recognizes that this man has guidance, and clearly recognizes that this man has something that Moses wants to learn. And as great a man as Moses was, he still went forward. So like the reason why I don't like the footnote that was the hadith of Moses being arrogant, and then because like all the Quran tells us is that when Moses found the man, he sought his guidance. And everything that the Quran has showed us has been that he has been quite guided himself, Moses. So either way, he's coming to the man for guidance. And what the man says next is very exciting.
قال إنك لن تستطيع معي صبرا.
So the righteous, guided, knowledgeable man said, indeed, you will never be able to be patient with me. Which is like, whoa. This is, again, we're talking about Moses, one of the great prophets, and essentially who brings down the Torah, which is very relevant for the Jews. And this righteous, knowledgeable man that was given God's mercy looks to this Moses, as great as he is, and says, you ain't going to be patient with me. And essentially he's saying, you're not going to be patient enough to learn what I have to teach you. And then he says,
وكيف تصبر على ما لم تحط به خبرا.
It is a beautiful question. He says, and how can you be patient about that which you do not encompass in it any knowledge? Which is a very interesting question. Because believers are often asked to believe despite a lack of knowledge sometimes, you know? Sure, a lot of knowledge is revealed to us through the Quran, but there's a lot of questions that we don't have the answers to. There's a lot of things that we don't understand, and we just have to believe. So it's ironic that the question of the righteous man to Moses was, how can you be patient about that which you have no knowledge in? But therein lies the parable. There's something for us to learn from Moses' journey with this righteous man, and there's a big lesson about being patient without knowledge, and we will see it transform over the next couple of episodes, over the next couple of verses.
قال ستجدني إن شاء الله صابرا ولا أعصي لك أمرا.
And then Moses said, you will find me, if God is willing, insha'Allah. Again, that key thing that we learned earlier in the chapter. Insha'Allah is very important to say. You will find me, insha'Allah, patient, and I will not disobey for you your command, your order. I'm going to do what you say. I'm going to be patient. Let's see what happens next.
قال فإن اتبعتني فلا تسألني عن شيء حتى أحدث لك منه ذكرا.
He said, then if you follow me, the righteous man said, and if you follow me, then do not ask me about anything until I present for you from it dhikra, mention. Until I mention it to you, until I bring it up to you, which again, for me, the dhikr is the remembrance, the mention, there always seems to be connected. What is dhikr? What is the story? Where is it going? But anyway, the righteous man tells Moses, follow me, but don't ask a single thing.
فانطلقا حتى إذا ركبا في السفينة خرقها قال أخرقتها لتغرق أهلها لقد جئت شيئا إمرا.
Okay. In the very next verse. So they both set out until they had embarked on a ship. So the righteous man made a hole in it. So Moses said, you make a hole in it to drown its people? Certainly you have done something that is terrible. Why would you put a hole in the ship and you make everybody drown and everybody, what? Why are you doing this? But again, what is Moses doing? He's asking a question about the righteous man's deeds, which is like, okay. So what does the righteous man say?
قال ألم أقل إنك لن تستطيع معي صبرا.
He said, didn't I say that you will not be able to be with me patient. You will not be able to be patient with me. Didn't I tell you that you won't be able to be patient with me? Which also, like, the interesting part is, it's also clear that the righteous man was given this knowledge as well, right? The Quran talks in the beginning that he was given a mercy from God and that he was given knowledge. So it's not all of us can say this to someone else, like, oh, you're not going to be able to be patient, because we don't know what's going to happen. But the righteous man was given knowledge. So he knew that Moses wasn't going to be patient, and he knew that all of this had to happen so that Moses can learn a lesson. But he tells them, didn't I tell you you ain't going to be patient? All right. So Moses said in return,
قال لا تؤاخذني بما نسيت ولا ترهقني من أمري عسرا.
Moses said, do not blame me for what I forgot. Which again, it was the one rule. Don't ask me anything. He said, don't blame me for what I forgot. And do not be hard upon me in my affair. And don't be very difficult. Don't make it very difficult. Don't make it difficult for me. I'm like, I forgot. I'm sorry. I forgot. Please, just don't be hard on me. Can we try again, essentially?
فانطلقا حتى إذا لقيا غلاما فقتله قال أقتلت نفسا زكية بغير نفس لقد جئت شيئا نكرا.
And the very next verse says, so they both set out until they had met a boy, a child. So the righteous man killed him. So Moses said, did you just kill a pure soul? Did you just kill a child, like a pure soul? Because he hasn't even reached maturity. Like, he can't do anything wrong because he's still learning. And you killed him for other than another soul? Like, in the time of Moses, there was an eye for an eye, a soul for a soul. And he's like, but you killed someone without him killing anyone. And he's a child and he's pure. Surely you have done something that is evil. This is outrageous. Why would you kill a child? And this is where we would have ended the episode had I not done a double dose for today. But obviously we can't end here. It's too exciting. It's too cool because it's like, what? You killed a child. All right. So what's next? The righteous man says once again,
قال ألم أقل لك إنك لن تستطيع معي صبرا.
He said, did I not tell you that you will not be able to be patient with me? That's twice. You know what they say, 3 strikes you're out. First he asked about the boat that was sunken. Then he asked about the child that was killed. And he's like, and all he says is, didn't I tell you that you will not be able to be patient with me? And honestly, I don't think any of us could pass this test, right? If you see someone doing something like that, you're like, what? Anyway, but yeah, I'm not going to say Moses is a greater man than us, but let's continue with the story. So that's strike 2. So what did Moses say?
قال إن سألتك عن شيء بعدها فلا تصاحبني قد بلغت من لدني عذرا.
So Moses said, if I ask you about anything after this, then do not keep me as a companion. You know what? Even Moses is saying, look, one last time. That's it. If I fail, I will remove myself. Because certainly I have exceeded, I've run out of, from my side, excuses. I've no more excuses to give. I've already broken what you said twice. If I do it one more time, let me go.
فانطلقا حتى إذا أتيا أهل قرية استطعما أهلها فأبوا أن يضيفوهما فوجدا فيها جدارا انقض فأقامه قال لو شئت لاتخذت عليه أجرا. Dum dum dum. Anyway, so the next verse, they say, so they set out until they came to a people in a town, a village, and they asked them for food. They asked the people to food. So, but استطعم أهلها. Oh, so they asked them for food, but the people refused to give them hospitality. So the people, like, they told them, hey, we're hungry, we're traveling, we're moving, can we have some food? And the people said, no. And then they found in it a wall that was about to be collapsed. So Moses and the righteous man, and the boy, by the way, we don't mention the boy, but the boy was traveling with Moses, so there are three people, which kind of reminds me of three wise men. But anyway, let's not get there. So they came to a people, they asked them for food, the people said no, and then they found a wall that's about to be collapsed. So the righteous man set it straight. He fixed the wall. And then Moses, being hungry, and he's like, they haven't fed us, and then you did this thing. He said, if you wished, surely you could take upon them a payment. You know, if you wanted to, you can ask them for money. We fixed their wall, so like, we can definitely get food for it. But as you've been paying attention to the story, the righteous man told Moses, don't ask me anything. Don't say anything. Don't. And here Moses is saying one more time, not understanding the message, not understanding the perspective. And it is different this time. This time he's not asking him a question. He's giving him a proposition. He's telling him, look, if you want, you can get payment, you know? Yeah. So what does the righteous man say? قال هذا فراق بيني وبينك سأنبئك بتأويل ما لم تستطع عليه صبرا. So the righteous man said, this is a separation between me and between you. I will inform you of the interpretation about that which you were not able to be patient of. So let me tell you about all these three situations that you could not be patient on. Let me explain to you. Clearly you're impatient, so we're going to separate, but before we separate, I'm going to explain to you what happened. أما السفينة فكانت لمساكين يعملون في البحر فأردت أن أعيبها وكان وراءهم ملك يأخذ كل سفينة غصبا. So as for the ship, and it was for poor people that were working in the sea. So I intended to cause defect in it, to make it not good to sail. I needed to kind of ruin it. And there was from behind them, someone chasing after them, a king, a tyrant, someone who's evil, who seized every ship by force. So essentially he disabled the ship while it was near the water and made them not able to set sail. And if they weren't able to set sail, they weren't about to be plundered by a king that was going to cause them a lot more harm than had their ship sailed where it had their ship sunk where it had sunk before. So he was saving the people from the tyrants by making them a little bit more limp in this moment, their ship a little bit limp, to make them not able to travel, to make them not able to do that, and to force them to be in a moment of more difficulty to survive a bigger calamity. That's lesson number one. That's story number one. وأما الغلام فكان أبواه مؤمنين فخشينا أن يرهقهما طغيانا وكفرا. Oh, interesting. I forgot to, as I was reading it earlier today, I forgot about this thing. The important point to note in the previous verse, he says, as for the ship, it was seized by those people working. So he says, so I intended that I cause defect in it after them, because after them was a king and who was going to seize the ship. And specifically he says, I intended. In the next story, he says, as for the boy,
Then his parents were believers, so we feared that he would overburden them in transgression and disbelief. And it says,
فأردنا أن يبدلهما ربهما خيرا منه زكاة وأقرب رحما. So it says, so we intended. So the ship was I intended. Now the story is we intended that we exchange for them, their Lord, what is better than him, that is in purity and nearer in affection. So the boy had true believers for parents, and he would pressure his parents into disbelief and defiance. And this is why in the previous episode I kind of ended by saying, would you kill baby Hitler moving forward? Because that's a moral conundrum. Would you commit an act that is seemingly evil that has positive outcomes in the future? And also the reverse moral of this lesson is that sometimes an evil thing is not, something that seems evil is not necessarily evil. It's hard for us to judge. But the first thing that we have so far is the ship. He wanted to save her from the tyrants. I wanted to sink it. Then the boy, I wanted to save his parents from him. So we wanted to change for them what was better. And then what comes in the next and final verse, and the third final verse? The wall that they repaired for the ungrateful assholes that didn't give them any food and he wouldn't take any payment. وأما الجدار فكان لغلامين يتيمين في المدينة وكان تحته كنز لهما وكان أبوهما صالحا فأراد ربك أن يبلغا أشدهما ويستخرجا كنزهما رحمة من ربك وما فعلته عن أمري ذلك تأويل ما لم تسطع عليه صبرا. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. I just love this ending. Anyway, he says, and as for the wall, so it was for two orphan boys that were in the city, and underneath it was a treasure for them, and their father was a righteous man. So God intended, فَأَرَادَ رَبُّكَ, God intended that they reach their maturity and they bring forth their treasure as a mercy from your Lord. So if you remember, the wall was crumbling in that town and he repaired the wall. And he repaired the wall when the people of the town were arrogant assholes, unkind, not even giving people who are passing in their journey to give them some food. They're being very selfish, stingy. So if the wall had collapsed, these people, before the boys had reached age, would have found the treasure. But because he repaired the wall, and again he said it because God intended, he repaired the wall, the boys would have a time to get older, and then as they get older they'll be able to find the treasure as a mercy from God. You know? And here he clarifies, the righteous man, I did not do this on my own accord. The ship, he did it because he wanted. The boy, he did it because we wanted, him and God, his will and God's will. And the wall, it's God intended. So we're seeing three different examples of how God, of how righteousness, of how good deeds are done through the act of God. Sometimes it's done from the will of the righteous. Sometimes it's done from the will of God and the righteous. Sometimes it's done from the will of God. And that's not to say that the will of the righteous is not the will of God, because in the end of the day, everything is by God. But there is a clear distinction between the self and God. And there is an important distinction to be had. And therein lies the lesson. And he says, that is the interpretation of what you were not able to be patient about. Now, there's a lot of things that we can learn from the story.
Yeah, and we're going to enter a different narrative in the next section, so let's take this moment to reflect. What is the story saying? The story is saying several things. The story is saying Moses had to go to someone who had more knowledge and wisdom than him, and also it's kind of a humbling story. One of the great prophets, still there was somebody that is more knowledgeable, still there is somebody that knows more, still there's somebody, so you don't know who is correctly guided and who is not correctly guided, because even the greats at moments are correctly guided. And also that God's will operates in a variety of formats. The God's will operates through the will of the righteous, through the will of God and the righteous, through the will of God alone. And that sometimes some things that seem terrible are not necessarily terrible, but are actually good. And some things that seem good are actually not in the benefit of those around him. So like, for instance, Moses was saying, you should take payment for repairing the wall. They wouldn't give us food, so tell them give us food because I repaired the wall. And getting payment for that ruins the deed and ruins the perspective, and like it creates doubt. So sometimes something that seems good is not necessarily a good thing. And the Quran says this in the very beginning of chapter 2, عَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْءٌ وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ وَعَسَىٰ أَن تُحِبُّوا شَيْءٌ وَهُوَ شَرٌ لَكُمْ, which means perhaps you may love something and it's bad for you, and perhaps you may hate something and it's bad for you, and perhaps you may love something and it's hate something and it's good for you, and perhaps you may love something and it's bad for you. And you never know who is given knowledge from God at what point in time. Beautiful, beautiful story. And then we get into a separate story about a separate person, and we start venturing upon a story that touches upon the signs of Judgment Day, which is a very interesting concept because I just found a video yesterday that talks about the signs of Judgment Day. And I think I'll get into a bit of a discussion at the end of it, but let's see. All right, already we're at like the 15-minute mark, so I don't know how long this video is going to be, but let's go. And let's meet a new character and a new narrative and a new story.
ويسألونك عن ذي القرنين قل سأتلو عليكم منه ذكرا.
And they ask you about Dhul Qurnayn, the one of two horns. And they don't mean that this is a creature with two horns. This is a man wearing a helmet of two horns. He's a very infamous creature of his time. He's supposed to be mighty, and I googled it. Some people put him as a pious and powerful king, legendary figure from the Quran, great and powerful Islamic ruler, traveled the world. And I'm not going to spoil what he does because we're going to read about it. He journeys, and then there's something that happens. So there's a lot of stories, a lot of ideas, a lot of concepts, but let's stick to what the Quran is saying, because that's the whole purpose of this channel. So they ask you about Dhul Qarnayn. Say, I will recite to you about him dhikra, remembrance, mentions, dhikr.
إنا مكنا له في الأرض وآتيناه من كل شيء سببا.
Indeed, we have established for him in the earth, we've established a land for him in the earth, we've established something for him, and we gave him from everything a means. We gave him land, we gave him means, we gave him power, we gave him strength, we gave him a lot of blessings. This man was very blessed.
فأتبع سببا.
Which is very interesting. We gave him from everything a means. Like, we gave him anything that he wanted to do, we gave him a way to do it. So then he followed a way. So it's the same word, sababa, which is kind of like the beauty and the rhyme of the Quran, is it's used in different contexts. We gave him everything, not a way, like not a journey, but we gave him a means, like a means to an end. A path, a road is a means to a distance. And then they say, so he followed sababa, so he followed a means, a course. So it says he was given a means to do everything, and he was following a course.
حتى إذا بلغ مغرب الشمس وجدها تغرب في عين حمئة ووجد عندها قوما قلنا يا ذا القرنين إما أن تعذب وإما أن تتخذ فيهم حسنا.
So he kept moving until he reached a setting place of the sun. So it kind of sounds like it's in the west. And he found her sitting on a spring of dark mud, so murky water, a swamp, question marks. And he found near it a people, a community. So we said, and again, the royal we is being said, it could be the angels, could be the God, could be the Spirit of God. Either way, we is the royal we. We said, Dhul Qarnayn, either you punish them or you take in them a goodness. You have an option. Do you punish these people or do you treat them good? So what does Dhul Qarnayn say?
قال أما من ظلم فسوف نعذبه ثم يرد إلى ربه فيعذبه عذابا نكرا.
He said, as for those who do wrong, then we will punish them, and then they will return to their God to be punished once more. So he's like, okay, so here's what I'm going to do. Those who do wrong, I'm going to punish them, and then God will punish them. I'll get them round one, you get them round two. Clear.
وأما من آمن وعمل صالحا فله جزاء الحسنى وسنقول له من أمرنا يسرا.
And as for those who believe and do good deeds, then for them is the reward that's good, and we will speak for him from our command with ease. So already we're kind of seeing the Qarnayn, mighty, powerful, able to torture or torment people, very mighty, and given the choice, do you torture? Do you do good? And he's like, for the evil I'll torture, for the good I'll do good. So clearly it's showing that he has wisdom, clearly it's showing that he has knowledge, clearly it's showing that he has power. This is a strong, capable, powerful, I want to say young man, but I have no idea how old he is.
ثم أتبع سببا.
Then he continued on a course. So he did this thing in this little murky water town, and he's like, all right, let me continue moving.
حتى إذا بلغ مطلع الشمس وجدها تطلع على قوم لم نجعل لهم من دونها سترا.
Until he reached the rising place of the sun. So first he went to the setting place of the sun, the west. Then he went to the rising place of the sun, the east. And he found it rising about a people, and he never found for them against it any shelter. So these people did not have any shelter from the sun, and they were in the sun all day long. Interesting. And here the footnote, they either had no clothes or homes to protect them from the sun. Yeah, both explanations could be understood. They just don't have something to block out, to shelter out the sun. Could be homes, could be clothes, we're not sure. Either way, he went east.
كذلك وقد أحطنا بما لديه خبرا.
And thus we have verily encompassed of what he was with him of information. كذلك وقد أحطنا بما لديه خبرا. I don't understand this. كذلك وقد أحطنا بما لديه خبرا. And thus we had encompassed or enveloped what he was with him of information. Does it mean that he was giving his information about how to shelter and how to protect yourself from the sun, and he gave it to them? But it says what we encompassed him. كذلك وقد أحطنا بما لديه خبرا. Thus we have encompassed what was with him in knowledge. Let me see the tafasir, maybe this might, 91. This means Allah knew everything about him and his army, and nothing was hidden from him, even though he came from so many different nations. Oh, okay, so I see what they're saying. They're saying that everybody knew about Dhul Qarnayn and his army, but I didn't get the impression that he was traveling with his army. And we truly had full knowledge of him. Anyway, let's not get cut up on this point. I don't fully understand it now. Maybe I'll understand it in the future. But anyway, he went to the village of the east. People have no shelter, either no clothes or no rest. And there was something about knowledge encompassing. And then, then for the third time, and again 3 seems to be a powerful number, he continued on his journey.
حتى إذا بلغ بين السدين وجد من دونهما قوما لا يكادون يفقهون قولا.
And then until he reached between the 2 mountains, and he found from besides them a community that barely understands speech. It says barely understand speech. They've added the word barely understand his speech. But the interesting part is the very next verse, tell him that they communicate with him. So what does barely understand speech mean? So that's why I guess the scholars have added his speech, because if they barely understand his speech, but then they speak in their own way, they can still communicate in a way that he doesn't understand. Which kind of would make sense. They're not really able to understand speech. But anyway, what did these people say?
قالوا يا ذا القرنين إن يأجوج ومأجوج مفسدون في الأرض فهل نجعل لك خرجا على أن تجعل بيننا وبينهم سدا.
So they said, even though they and here's an interesting point. It says they barely understand speech, but it doesn't say they can't speak. There's a difference between being able to hear and listen and being able to speak and communicate. And it's not that they can't understand, they struggle to understand. But anyway, they said, O Dhul Qarnayn, indeed, Ya'juj wa Ma'juj, Gog and Magog, Gog and Magog. We'll get to what it's being said first, and then we'll get into the history and lore behind it. Ya'juj and Ma'juj, Gog and Magog, these 2 entities, are corrupting in the earth. So may we make for you an expenditure, a tribute, can we give you anything, so that you can make between us and between them a barrier. And you notice in the beginning of the episode, talked about the barrier between the disbelievers and those they used to invoke outside of God. There was a barrier created between them, and now we're bringing it back full circle. There's a barrier at the end of this section, so to speak. So he says,
قال ما مكني فيه ربي خير فأعينوني بقوة أجعل بينكم وبينهم ردما.
He says something beautiful. He says, they asked him, shall we pay you? Shall we give you a tribute? Shall we give you some sort of money, some sort of reward? And he says, what my God has established me in, what my God has given me in, what my God has applied to my life, what God has given to me is better. But assist me in strength, which again, this is why I feel like he was not traveling with his armies. But assist me in strength, and I will make between you and between them a barrier. Interesting.
آتوني زبر الحديد حتى إذا ساوى بين الصدفين قال انفخوا حتى إذا جعله نارا قال آتوني أفرغ عليه قطرا.
I was trying to understand if this was a miracle or not. But he says, bring to me the sheets of iron. So that until he made it, he had leveled it between the two cliffs. Then he said, blow. And I wonder why he said blow. And I was wondering, is this some form of miracle? Is this some form of witchcraft? Is this some form of knowledge that he had? Is it that they had hot coals and they found a way to but why would blow be the word if they're using a tool? So I thought it was very interesting. But they blow until then he made it a fire. And he said, bring to me and I'll pour over it a molten copper. So the instances of what's happening in the miraculousness of it all, I have question marks about. But essentially he puts, in between the two mountains, he puts a wall, sets it up, tells them to blow, fire comes, hot comes, and he says, all right, as the hot is here, give me molten copper to pour over it so that I can see it.
فما استطاعوا أن يظهروه وما استطاعوا له نقبا.
So there's two different words here, asta'u and astata'u. And I'm going to do my best to try to remember the difference between them, but I'm going to butcher them, and I'm sure my the person who taught me this the first time is going to be very, very sad. But it says they were not able to scale it, and they were not able to penetrate it. And here what's understood is it's Ya'juj wa Ma'juj, Gog and Magog, are not able to get over the wall, and it is impossible for them to penetrate it, if that's how I remember it. Ista'u means they're not able to, and istata'u is impossible. That's how it was explained to me. Either way, they can't get over it and they can't go through it. One of them is more prevalent than the other, and one more is prevalent. Now, what does this have to do with Judgment Day? Does it say it in the next verse? Because the next verse is the last. Yeah, well, we'll do the last verse and then we'll talk about what it has to do with Judgment Day.
قال هذا رحمة من ربي فإذا جاء وعد ربي جعله دكا وكان وعد ربي حقا.
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't really talk about it much in the next couple of verses. So this is the last verse for today. The last verse says, he said that this is a mercy from my Lord, that he built this wall and that he put Gog and Ya'juj and Ma'juj, Gog and Magog, behind the wall. They can't penetrate it, they can't get over it. But when it comes to them, the promise of my Lord, he'll make it level. So what does it say? But when the promise of my Lord comes, he will make it level. The wall that I built that is secure, that's going to protect you from Ya'juj and Ma'juj, when the promise of my Lord comes, it will be flattened. And my God's promise was in truth. So what does this have to do with Judgment Day? Exactly that. One of the signs of Judgment Day is that the wall of Ya'juj and Ma'juj is going to be broken down. And Gog and Magog are going to leave that little valley, and they are going to cause a lot of destruction, devastation in the earth. Which brings us to the concept of prophecies. And it has been raised to my attention that there are some prophecies that the Prophet Muhammad has said that are not in the Quran. I thought that all the prophecies of the Prophet Muhammad were in the Quran. And I am mistaken. Which means I am going to have to look at hadith for sure at the end of all the Quran. Because there are a lot of prophecies that are not there. And a lot of what we know comes from the Prophet Muhammad, which we are not studying at this point in time. Therefore, I cannot cover it. But one of the signs said Ya'juj and Ma'juj, which we don't know what Ya'juj and Ma'juj are. There might be jinn, there might be spirits, we don't know what species they are, we don't know their power. We just know that they're very powerful. And I think it has to do with the people not being able to talk. I think their effect on the people, no, not being able to talk, not being able to understand. I don't know. I'm making assumptions that might not be there. Either way, it's one of the signs of the apocalypse. The reason why I say it's also interesting is because I found a video yesterday that was talking about the signs of the apocalypse, about the barefooted people, the deserts of the nomads, the deserts of the sands will build buildings that's up to the skies and extend up to the skies. But I think that's a part of the prophecy of the Prophet Muhammad outside of the Quran, which would make sense because he's a prophet, right? He's not just a messenger. The Quran is also a message as much as it is a prophecy. I thought that because it was a prophecy as well, that it fulfilled Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the Prophet Muhammad's, peace be upon him. I thought because the Quran was a prophecy, it fulfilled all of his duties as a prophet, but he might have had duties outside of it, and therefore we have to kind of also see what he said outside of it to learn. But again, the purpose of this channel is to focus on the Quran and focus on what we have in front of us. So I'm not going to venture too far into the signs of Judgment Day, into the prophecies of the Prophet Muhammad at this point in time, but I will in the future, inshallah. There we go. Exciting stories. Yeah, very, very cool. Very, very exciting. I'm very happy. I love this. I mean, the story of Al-Qadr, his name is Al-Qadr, that we know him in Islam, but the Quran does not say the righteous man's name. We have just given him a name. The Quran does say Dhul Qarnayn, but Dhul Qarnayn, the one of two horns, is a descriptor. It's not a name, which is very interesting. I found these verses to be fascinating. I love this. There's a lot of stories in it. And what was interesting, I also wanted to bring up about Dhul Qarnayn, is that he said, when they told him, let's pay you, he said, don't need to pay me. God's going to take care of me. And you see that with the righteous man as well. Righteous man always says, you don't have to pay me. You don't have to do this. God will take care of me. Which I find to be very beautiful. These are very wonderful stories. And even about the righteous and wise Moses, he still had a more righteous and wise teacher. So don't be arrogant is the main lesson. And thank you all for watching. We always end with Sadaqallahu al-Ali al-Azim. And I appreciate you. And I will see you guys tomorrow. We're not doing Safa and I tomorrow. We're doing Safa and I on Sunday as we normally do. And I will do a regular Quran episode tomorrow. And inshallah I'll do the Quran episode tomorrow. And inshallah I'll do the Quran episode with Safa on Sunday. Inshallah. Thank you for watching. Ma'as-salama. Love you. Bye. Oh, there's a viewer on YouTube. There's always somebody. I mean, I love y'all. It's fantastic. Oh, Mahab is here. Did you hear any of the story? Anyway, I'm going to say goodbye, YouTube. Thanks for watching.